Hi, my name's Tony Ridley and welcome back to another Crisis Leadership and Management Education tutorial. In this section we're talking about priority decision making, and this subset we're going to talk about goals, setting goals and performance standards for crisis management. Fundamentally, crisis management should be approached like any other business process. It should be measurable, it should have desired outcomes, it should be tracked, it should be performance based. And each organisation is going to vary, but I'll just touch on some simplified processes or potentially advanced, depending on where you're at, to ensure that, again, you have a system and a methodology to preserve consistency, to measure performance results, and ensure that you remove a lot of the emotional and intuitive content that can subsequently cause a lot of problems, get you into all sorts of difficulties, because you fail to identify the signs, you were overwhelmed with information, or simply were unable to identify or understand what you had to measure as part of your key deliverables. So if we look at the basics, and let's start with a 5-point brief. So if we look at the mnemonic of SMART, very simple, specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound. Now, you can't get any more simplified than that. Specific goals and criteria. If you want to keep stakeholders updated on a fully briefed on the situation, then it needs to be documented. It needs to be specific. Everything that we've covered to this point, we've spoken about specificity in terms of removing the vagueness, making sure that people are communicated, in many instances maybe even over communicating, and there's often a fine line or a threshold between that. Making sure that the information and objectives in particular have been articulated, much the same as any performance reporting on individuals, departments or business units, making sure that it's not wordsmithed or defined in such a way that it's unclear or vague. Then it needs to be measurable. You can't improve what you can't measure, and particularly when it comes to crisis management, the successful resolution or the avoidance of or the mitigation of or the preservation, all these things need to be measurable in terms of specific guidelines. And again, they could be mathematical, data-based, they could be a whole host of things that are defined by the organisation, the individuals, or possibly even the team. And they need to be attainable in the sense that it's unrealistic to expect miracles. It's certainly unrealistic to expect individuals and departments and so on to achieve beyond the realms of their capabilities or human capacity. Making sure, now this is not to say that the benchmark gets set low or that there's a whole lot of concessions made, but progressively you can add to this. Progressively you can add stretch. Progressively you may be more aggressive or more optimistic with it, but certainly in the early stages you need to make achievable goals and attainable goals as part of your criteria management, because remembering, if it's a true crisis, then 90% of the event is not under your control to begin with. There is a whole host of other ancillary environmental aspects that are beyond your control, because if it was in your control, then you are the crisis. So remembering, you need to, until such time as you get an semblance of response and effectiveness put in place, then they need to be attainable. And this plays into being realistic. Again, is you can't expect everything to go your way in every sense. You certainly can't surrender yourself, but you need to be able to review and assess how realistic some of your goals were, and if upon revision, and all of these should be repeatable, revisable systems, if you revise after the first 5 to 10 hours of a crisis and you look at 80% of your goals were not achieved, then you've got a problem. This can either be a problem of the crisis is far worse and out of control, or your goals were simply unrealistic. Again, it's a performance metric that you can benchmark against to determine exactly which side of the coin are you on in terms of being unrealistic or you are failing in your current course of action. And then T, being time bound. Again, you need to have coordination, logistics constraints, and inform people. They've got 10 minutes, 5 hours, 6 weeks to do this. Bearing in mind that in many instances, depending on the complexity of the teams, the individuals, and the priority apportioned, it may not be addressed in the time in which you wish, but it's important that you make sure that you provide those boundaries and guidelines to ensure that there's no unpleasant surprises or a misalignment between expectations, comprehension, and understanding. So again, just using a basic project approach, specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound, can be the beginning of a far more detailed process. It can be the beginning of a far more regimented system. However, all systems need to begin in some point, and this is certainly the most effective and standardized and certainly replicatable, that can be quickly spread throughout teams and cascaded down at all stages. So that's enough on goal, standards, and performance. For more information on this subject and crisis leadership management, please go to the website at www.crisismanagement.tony-ridley.com. That's all for now. Thanks very much, and goodbye.